go. So viva motherfucking Las Vegas.
Yeah, yeah.
Have
Well,
you watched that TV show Space Force yet?
no, I haven't. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
It's I'm pretty sure it's all the same writers, and Steve Carell is also in it from, I guess that's The Office.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and a lot of the same actors are in it as well. It's very much the same type of humor, but it's all wrapped around Space Force being, this actual government thing with Steve Carell in charge. It's so much funny. But
Oh
what's
my
funny
God.
about it is there's like certain things that played out in the show that like NASA and SpaceX and Space Force are actually doing, which I'm like, huh. Like they had a whole storyline where they were going to put a black woman on the moon. And the joke was, spoiler alert, that she, instead of saying it's good to be back on the moon, she said it's good to be black on the moon. but, but then NASA announced this program to, for equality's sake, because there's never been a woman on the moon and there's never been a black person on the moon. We're going to have to send a black person to the moon just for equality's sake. And I
Yeah,
was like,
well,
you guys watch
NASA
the
has never
show?
NASA's never sent anybody to the moon either, so it doesn't much, man. Yeah, there may be some other agencies that have gone in that vicinity, but not NASA, not the public NASA anyway.
I like the what was that show? To the Moon, Alice. I kept hearing that when I was a kid over
Oh, oh gosh, yeah, I know which one you're
Moonlighters.
talking about. What was his name? Jackie Gleason,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The Honeymooners.
That was it. That was
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Back when you used to like talk about beating women on television,
Yeah, they would have gotten canceled real fast now, right?
right? Funny how
Oh
things
gosh.
changed.
Well, is that show Space Force on Netflix?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my favorite show on Netflix that I found is called The Good Place. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not.
I have not. What's that one?
But the concept is these four people who die on Earth, they go to this other place called The Good Place. Well, and as soon as they arrive there, they're like in an office sort of setting, and the main character tells them, "So and so, you're dead. But the good news is you're in the good place." So then they start to tell them, you've led an exemplary life, and because of that, you're in the good place. Sort of like heaven, right?
Yeah.
And so they're like, "Oh yeah, cool," and he shows them around this little neighborhood and everything. But actually, what it really is a fake good place. But they're actually torturing psychologically these people in the good place. But it is so well written. The characters are amazing. The acting is amazing, and there's just tons of little gems in there as far as spiritual understandings and teachings. It just blew me away. I was really bummed, when I got to, they had 4 seasons of it. And when it finally ended, I wanted it to keep going, but it just, for anybody that's into watching Netflix stuff, that's my favorite by far.
That sounds like a fun one. Definitely
Yeah,
sounds.
it's pretty cool. And then they talk about the bad place, right? Which would be like hell, right? And then they go into a lot of that and the conceptual ideas of torturing humans in the bad place because they've been bad people, and yeah. Anyway, I won't spoiler alert it anymore, but yeah, it's definitely worth watching if you like that, kind of entertainment.
Yeah, I made the mistake of deciding I needed to rewatch The Walking Dead.
Oh,
It's too many seasons. It went on for too long.
was that good? I don't know if I've ever seen any of those. So did you
Oh,
like that one?
it's amazing. Yeah, I mean,
I'll have to check that one out then.
there's moments in just about every season where it gets a little bit lame, but overall, like any zombie themed thing, the study there is what happens over time with, like, power and control and trying to keep your people safe and us versus them and all those different dynamics
Hmm.
really play out hard. Similar to the show The 100. In The 100, I liked because the person in power kind of kept changing over often. The structure stayed the same, but the person in power would change over often. So you would see that it was really up to the whims of whoever said dictator or benevolent leader was, right? So um with Walking Dead, it's more like, there's one group here and they spend some time, they kind of get themselves established, and then they realize there's another group over there. And, both of them are running out of things. So, one will take the approach of, hey, let's be friends. The other one will be like, how about I just kill you and steal your stuff? Right. So,
Nice.
you know, uh, that whole thing. And then there's a character called Negan who is clearly like the psychopath. He's one of the bad guys in the show, but his character arc, especially when he tells his own backstory, so fascinating. Like it's just the acting of that particular character and how they use them within the story. It's a very fascinating, very well written show. Has its moments, and like I said, they dragged it on a little too long, but yeah, that's what I like about zombie stuff, is because it's not the zombies, right? They show you in a hurry. Like the zombies, yeah, it's a threat for a while, but you learn how to manage that. And
Yeah.
then it becomes us versus them, this tribe versus that tribe, you know, this ideology versus that ideology, this group versus that group, right? It's just a, if you were just imagine the zombies NPCs today, or people who just don't give a fuck today, right? It's exactly what goes on in the world.
Well, that's interesting you mentioned the zombies because Department of Defense in the U.S. actually has an entire training section on zombies, and so begs one to wonder how they're going to impose that type of. I mean, we sort of have it now, like you said, with the NPCs, but um, there's a whole idea that they're going to impart some kind of nasty mind control, chemicals or set of chemicals or these things, and you know, basically zombify a huge portion of the population. So
Well,
kind of bizarre.
they've already done that, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, like what I worry about is like, let me back up here. Obviously, like the whole zombie lore is based on actual experimentation done by the military, right? Like that's pretty well known. But behind, for people who are into zombie lore, the whole court battle between George Romero and John Russo, I believe was his name, over the name Night of the Living Dead, kind of tells you the story. There was an NDA involved with the military, and someone didn't want to break it, and the other one did, and so they went to court over a name, and one won the name, and then the rest of the movies became like Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. I'm looking at the titles of them on my wall. That helps, but yeah, it's that's pretty well known. And then today, I mean, now they kind of have the technological meanings, right? Between certain substances, like you mentioned, chemicals. There's also more solid substances, like metals and plastics, that are in people. Um, in the newest Matrix movie, they show you an example of that. They call it the swarm. And I've talked about this as well, like a swarm AI. Once everyone kind of has those implants and those, signals that go on in the brain that cause you to fire can be altered, then there's nothing to stop something operating that in swarms, right? And kind of the answer to, there's the whole thing of like, if they ever asked the military to fire on civilians, would they? Well, if they have a button that they could push that makes them forget who they are long enough to do that, right?
yeah.
Those MK Ultra experiments that they did on how to, like, switch, mess with people's minds. And something I point out to people all the time is, if they can receive something from the brain, then they can send, right? If they've built some type of technology that can receive information from the body or the brain, then it has, based on computer science, the ability to send back, right? Input,
Yep.
processing, output. And so just the other day, it's the third one now, using an MRI machine in reverse to basically put on a screen what people were thinking, right? So if they told you to think about a cat, you thought about a cat, that cat that you thought of would appear on the screen. Or if they asked you to remember something, the memory would appear on the screen. And yeah, so for years now, I've been saying, like, if they have the ability to read with an MRI machine, then they also have the ability to put it back in, right? And if they can actually take an image from what they're reading, then that means they can actually put an image back in the same way. right? So
Yeah, yeah. The brain is the pretty much the ultimate transceiver. It can go both ways, and that's how we encode this holographic world is totally through the brain, the nervous system. You know how we navigate in this insanity that we're in.
speaking of, how are things in your part of the world?
uh, you know, it's gotten a little bit better since they lifted all the so-called mandates. You know, and it's beginning to seem a little bit more whatever we used to think was normal, and you know, gigs are starting to open up again, which is fun for me because that's what I love to do. But uh, other than that, it's not too bad. But we see all this kind of crazy stuff lurking in the the nether worlds, waiting to be foisted on us at any point in time. You know, they talk about this. The new Marburgs and the, you know, all this other crap that they want to hit us with, and then financial collapse, and you know we just saw a huge bank in Silicon Valley totally go into receivership, and of course that was one of the main funders of big tech. So you got to really wonder on that one. And so people that are on the sort of white hat side are saying, yeah, see here we're making it happen. You know, we're taking them down. You know, yeah, well maybe. You know, you got
Well,
to
but
wonder.
yeah, I
You know, I'm always questioning things, and you know, I'm very hopeful that the whole concept of the white hats and all that is really going on and is really working on our behalf. But you have to really wonder because so far it's still very, very clandestine, and you know, you can kind of say, well, it has to be right now. But then again, it would be so nice to know definitively that we have some really great people working on our behalf. So, what's your take on all that?
well, I mean, I feel like the result is kind of showing the opposite, right? Like it's like we could cherry pick and say in any one way that we've won a battle, but it's like we've also lost several other wars at the same time, right? Something I've kind of recognized recently. I was listening to someone talk about the left versus the right, and when they were explaining why the left is winning, it's my explanation for why the dark side wins, right? Or the Illuminati, if you will, wins almost word for word. Even though they differ in opinion on so many different things, they're willing to back, support, and fight for each other. Where the people on the right will just not do that, right? It's like, okay, we're conservative in all of these various ways, but you know, you're not a Christian, so I can't support you.
Right,
I,
right.
I don't necessarily hate you, I just can't support you. Where on the other side, it's like, you know, I'm trans, but I don't really think that furries is a thing. At the same time, I recognize that fighting for furries helps me as a trans, so I'm going to be willing to fight for the furries, right? And that's what we see on that side. And that is very much how the world got to this state, and like another example of how it just become part of the public world. But a big part of this financial collapse is if they don't bail it out, what that means is that like the development in the United States has to halt. And because the United States is already so far behind China in that way, that puts you guys like 15 to 20 years behind China in a hurry. So you know that the bailout's going to come. So what happened? When was the last time that happened? Right around 2008,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how did that work out for us? Not
Well,
well.
it worked out great for the bankers and the big insurance companies and Wall Street. They just cashed in on all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people have been saying this has been coming for a long time, so I don't think any of us are really surprised. But I guess it's, you know, I think that's kind of just the first domino. And
Well, it's the fishing. I call it the fisherman's net method because what they'll do is, you know, crash stuff so that the asset values go down, you know, just like they did in 2008, 2009. And then once they hit rock bottom, well, hey, we're going to cast our net out there and pull in all these cheap assets, buy them up real cheap, and you know, as it goes back up, it's just this endless cycle of harvesting, you know, the normies out in the world to their benefit.
and if you imagine the difference this time being that they don't want you to be able to buy anything back at the end of it. right?
Well, yeah, when you see that BlackRock and Vanguard have been buying up rental houses by the thousands,
Yeah,
that goes into the whole you'll own nothing and you'll be happy
exactly, right.
because we own it all.
If you
You
just
know,
imagine 2008 happened, and instead of like doing what they did where they bought everything and then they sold it back to us at a higher rate, you know what I mean? This time they buy everything and they just don't sell it back, they rent it back to us, right? So it's almost like, because I always feel like things happen in like a test run first, right? Like they'll throw out and kind of like a net and see what they get, and then if it works, they'll throw an even bigger net, right? Or they'll go back to that same spot, or they're looking for the right fishing spot. And yeah, I think that, looking back on it now, that was kind of a blueprint for them for how to cause a reset, right? Because again, just switch that one step on that hind end of it and put everyone in 15-minute cities, and all of that other stuff that is being jumped all over. Like I know Canada's, I think we've got at least 3 of them right now on the work in the works.
uh,
Yes, you guys do too. Five to
yeah.
6 of them that I remember hearing about. So yeah, it's only a matter of time before all of that pops up. And with this happening right now, ahead of that, especially if you start adding in the war that's going on top of that, it really does smell like history.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it sure does. And there's been a couple things, a couple ideas that I've seen recently that give me some hope, but that is all based on our ability to get information out to masses of people, and that's where we lack. That's where we're really way behind. Because although alternatives sources have popped up, a lot of them are basically controlled opposition. So we're not quite where we need to be information wise. But there was a guy I saw put out a video. He's a blue collar kind of guy. And he said, really and I think his website is bluecollarboycott.com, bluecollarboycott.com. And he said, all of us tradesmen, all of us people who build the shit that's out there, we build the industry, we build all the high tech stuff, we build the low tech stuff, we build everything. If we decide that we're not going to build their smart cities and we're not going to build anything that's contrary, to the people and that's detrimental to the people, they're going to have a lot more of a rough time. I love that concept, but then you got to understand that it's a great concept, but if enough people don't adopt it and if it doesn't get out there and catch legs, it's just another great idea. But that's one that I really thought was quite excellent.
Yeah, it's and funny because I hate that my brain still works like this. But I was thinking while you were talking in real time, I was coming up with this scenario where it's like, okay, all the people who live here stop wanting to work, right? Refuse to work in that. And the way that the Democrats seem to like to demonize things and people and groups these days, you turn that into a movement, right? Of like, I don't know what you would call them, some type of domestic terrorist. And we have a whole new reason to start bringing in people from the Ukraine, right? We have a whole new reason to maybe give those people sneaking in over the southern border a job, right? So it's kind of funny because that's going
Yeah.
on in the U.S. too, and you're right there too. So what's going on between Mexico and the U.S. has been quite quiet. Like a friend was telling me today of a story where it's like people are afraid to go on vacations if they live too close to that border because the Mexican cartels will just move into their house and occupy it. And then you come home and what do? Right? Then you
Yeah. Were you going
call
to
the
tell them
cops.
to leave?
Yeah, you can tell them to leave, but then they won't. And then you can
Yeah.
call the cops won't do anything.
Right.
So
Oh, I know. It's
literally, like
terrible.
they're just squatting on people's houses. Even the floods in, I guess, like the Beverly Hills area, there was a few instances of it happening even there, where people knew that they had abandoned the house because of the flood. So these Mexican people were just moving into the house, occupying the house. And then when they come home, they're like, and that kind of thing happens in, is it Palestine, I guess, all the time. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Whole developments happens over there like that.
yeah, so it's just interesting to see it. And you mentioned development. There's also been reports of them building, like just kind of going out and then putting like, they would have like their weed fields down in those states, going over and just building these big complexes there with no permits, no anything, hacking into city water and just running it with these long pipes. And because of the way that, like, defund the police, right? Because of that whole shtick, um, no one's doing anything about it. Nobody will do anything about it. So it's almost like there's another quiet little war going on down there right now
Oh
between
yeah.
the cartels and the Americans. And yeah, obviously the states won't report that. It's being reported heavily though in the countries that are kind of at war with the United States right now, which I also find ironic, right? So yeah.
Well, there's Arizona. Recently, I watched a gal testify. She was invited to testify before the state house of Arizona about the corruption of cooperation between politicians and the cartel and money laundering using real estate. And you know what was really fascinating is that probably half the people or more of the politicians sitting there listening to her were the ones actually doing what she was talking about. And so a couple of them said, you know, you're extremely brave to come in here and tell us that. They actually said that a couple times, and which is absolutely true because these people are up to their ears in corruption and grift and you name it. But they actually got this whole scheme going where they use cartel money to buy real estate, and then they also use cartel money to sell it at a hugely overinflated price, and then the proceeds get split up amongst the different politicians and the different industry people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a mini cosm of Ukraine, because Ukraine is such a hotbed of money laundering and kickbacks, so we were sending billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine, and of course Ukraine is investing in FTX, and FTX is funding all the Democrat politicians. It just goes, it's like, oh my God, does
Yeah,
this shit ever end? And no, it doesn't.
yeah, in a way, it's almost like they saw it coming or something, that there was going to be a war and they wouldn't be able to launder money over there, and they would have to do something here, and they might have to set up an infrastructure of that for that ahead of time. Huh.
Hmm.
Almost
Hmm.
that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, but we still don't want Ukraine to go down, so we're going to pour every frickin' dime we can get our hands on into that one because we'll 80-90% of it will come back to us, which is always good, and then maybe we can slow things down a little bit. But I,
And I think
um,
provoking the bear, so to speak, over there is
yeah,
deliberate, so
yeah, and I think their concept is that they will wear down Russian resources over time by prolonging this whole thing. But from people that I watch who are actually over there or in nearby, or they have people, friends and family that are actually in the area, it's a whole different game. I mean, Ukraine is basically just completely gone. There's nothing left to save or really much left to fight for. Their military is completely decimated. The ones that they have fighting now are mercenaries and a lot of Polish military, from my understanding.
and the other
And
thing that's not necessarily celebrated or reported properly over here is the fact that we've been sending from the United States over there means that we don't have it here.
yeah, we're
Right.
depleting our resources.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
mean, it's just a total insanity
there
everywhere.
was
And
actually someone from the military who said recently that if anything were to happen, like kick off like tomorrow, the United States isn't ready to do anything about it. Right?
yeah, that's totally true. And you got to wonder if that's not by design.
Not by
We've
design
got,
at all. And absolutely. And then what happens? The same thing in World War II. And you get to activate all those companies again and build all new weapons, right? Make all kinds of new money, right?
yeah, well, they get new money anyway from the Ukraine stuff, right? So a certain portion of that is going to the old military industrial complex, and then of course they'll really be hitting the big time, like you said, if we did have to defend ourselves in a Oh,
Well, and that's
so
the part of it that worries me is the kind of mockery that I see from that side, because I know people in both of the countries that would be kind of looking at the United States right now. And some of the tomfoolery is hilarious. Like I think I might have pointed out to my audience here, but we have this 24-hour news station in Toronto called CB24 that had reported about a lidar balloon that belong to the Chinese military, because we have the Chinese military in Canada pretty openly right now, had accidentally crossed the border, and the
oops.
Chinese government had just alerted Canada so that Canada could alert the United States. And then you guys all know what happened with the balloon, right? No mention of any of that because China, because yeah. And I just think it's funny that like people in Canada at when that happened were like, wait a second, we have Chinese military operating in Canada? And it's like, yeah, we have for like 7 to 10 years now. And, Canadians like myself and many other, what you would consider a patriotic Canadian have been speaking up about this for a long time, being like, guys, they're like training military here. They've built military bases. They've built concentration camps here. They, they now have police offices here for the CCP to be like, if you are from China and you're here and you see another person who is Chinese not doing what they're supposed to do, so that you have an actual police office to go to report them.
Isn't that
Right?
swell?
Yeah. And we share an open border with you guys, which is kind of funny. Right? So if you really kind of think about it that way and you were to kind of, yeah, it would be really hard. It's even hard for me, and I'm not quite American, but it's really hard to like pull my head out of that view. But if you were just kind of look at it, it's like they would have no problem getting Mexico on their side, like China and Russia, to invade the United States if that's what they wanted to do. And they're already in Canada, right? So they're literally like here and here, and kind of also watching the United States pour everything into Ukraine. And that's probably why they're laughing. Like I don't know if you've watched many of their like political speakings, but like Putin's laughing. It's actually quite funny. Like he's not mad, he's not upset. He's like, this is kind of a joke, and it really quite comical to watch it all.
Well,
So
he's totally got the upper hand. It's real obvious, and he's just toying with that whole Ukraine thing now.
yeah,
And a lot of people don't realize that we taunted him since 2014 when we sponsored the coup to wipe out the legitimate government of Ukraine and put in our puppets. And Zelensky being the latest version of that, the cross-dressing comedian actor Zelensky. It's just you couldn't write a more absurd, ridiculous scenario. I mean, a guy Zelensky, he plays the president on a Ukrainian TV show, and then just a few years later, he is the president. It's like,
it's
you,
like I
you
said,
can't write a more ridiculous
they've been
script
rubbing in
that
our
we're
face
watching
in
right
it.
now.
They've
How,
been rubbing
how
our
do you
face in it.
how
Yeah.
do you get more bizarre than this? But it's sad that so many people don't understand that is what has happened. It's like
Well,
really.
even the most recent thing that's happening right now in the US with the January 6th stuff,
Oh
and
yeah,
that video of the police escorting the QAnon shaman around, and like people literally watching the video and calling it a lie,
yeah.
right? Like,
Oh
how,
yeah. What
don't
is
believe
it?
your own eyes. Like, don't believe the video that you're watching with your own eyes because the news told you not to. And that's actually happening, and people are doing it. Like, I actually had a conversation with someone in at a grocery store the other day where they actually said that to me. They're like, "Oh, that video is faked." I'm like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, the one Tucker Carlson played on the news, that's fake." I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's in a real video. They're like, oh, he's lying. He's lying. I'm like, okay, right.
Yeah,
So
that cognitive dissonance kicks in, man. They just, it's just uh, too disruptive to their sense of security and their belief system to for them to even consider it. So
yeah,
sad.
It is, you know.
That's where we're at, though. And so, it's an information battle, it's a consciousness battle. Uh, I don't know. What's the percentage that we need to have before we can flip this thing around?
I don't even know, man. I think it's yeah, somehow we've got to do something about the people we're giving the power to, right? So,
Hmm.
and I don't know what the fix is for that at this point. You know, it's almost it's so embedded into so many different things that it almost does seem like something that even from a benevolent point of view needs a reset. You know, so
Yeah, yeah, and I mean the solutions are so incredibly easy and simple. I mean, just basic non-cooperation, but that requires people to understand what they're involved with, what the game is, and what's happening, and what's actually happening. Then they can, take on the idea of, you know what, we don't like that shit. We're not going to cooperate with it. We're not doing it. What are you going to do about it? Nothing.
yeah.
So then we just go about our merry way, and that's the way it should be. Theoretically, we could, we do have the power if we stand together, but that's the tough part is, getting people, lined up with that information and that idea. And, there are more and more people every day, having some of those realizations, but how bad must it get to really jar people out of their programming? I don't know.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, unfortunately, that same dynamic that I was talking to earlier with the people who are waking up to things now still kind of exists. You know what I mean? Like people will, say you were researching any topic, it's inevitably going to end you back at like QAnon or the flat earth or, something like that, right? And all of those little honeypots, so to speak, are out there to discourage people at this point. And I've been saying this all along that like they're there for a reason, but today is the reason. So that as we are waking people up, there's always that worry that, and I mean, it's not even a worry; it's inevitably going to happen that these people, as they wake up, are going to stumble down one of those rabbit holes. So it's almost like the new game for us also becomes being okay, not that far down. Come on back up. There's lots of other holes. Just don't go all the way to the bottom because
Of
there is no
course.
point.
Yeah, there's always going to be the distractions and the misdirections and all of that stuff. Yeah, it's all part of the chess game, and I don't know, are we playing 5D, 7D chess or, it almost seems doesn't even have to be that complicated because people are so easily programmed and manipulated. It could very easily be done 3D, no problem.
They can beat us at checkers. We don't even need a page.
Yeah. Let's go 2D, baby.
They're still kicking
Yeah,
our ass at like crazy eights and stuff over here. So
go fish. Yeah, right.
go fish. Yeah, that was the first thought. I was trying to think like what's a game that you can barely lose. Go
Yeah.
fish. Because we'd still lose that one somehow.
Oh, yeah, and Monopoly, right?
Yeah. A Monopoly, you're set up to win by losing. It's,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? It's like a trade-off.
And always when you get in trouble, you got to go to the bank, right? You got to go beg to the bank.
Well,
It's
that's what they've done such a good job of, especially over the last few years of like putting this fear of scarcity and not being able to do things, not being able to get things into our heads. If it were just inflation right now, and we didn't just have a pandemic and all of this food shortage, supply chain disruption, programming that we've been under during all of that time, then people would be a lot more pissed about $10 eggs, right? But there's a lot of people who like once again, it's something I hear in real time. People will justify it out loud, being like, oh well, there's just some problems and it's only temporary, and it's going to come back down, and whatever they heard on the news for that.
it's those truckers. It's those truckers. They did it.
And there's that sometimes too, right? Yeah. But then like, yeah, and I've given the example to some other people. Like I can remember last summer waiting in line for some fucking french fries, and some dude talking to me, and making a lot of sense, kind of talking a lot of conspiracy stuff about money, and what they're doing and all of that. And I just noticed, because it's a really busy spot, I just noticed like there was an audience, like there was people listening and they were engaged and they were learning. And then he's like, oh, and you know what's going on for real in the Ukraine right now is the US is mad because Putin just released 100,000 kids from underground bases all through the Ukraine. And everybody goes, right? Everyone
Their
just walks
brains
away.
explode.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a crazy person,
Yeah, yeah.
that's what it sounds like, at least. So that's why that's there. And it was like, 10 years before QAnon ever happened, I was kind of saying, that's what they want to do with this. So we do have to be careful. It's a very slippery slope between, questioning, getting information out, exploring concepts and ideas, and creating QAnon, right? Or yeah, Corey Good, or
Yeah.
or our friend Kim Possible. You know what I
Oh
mean?
my gosh. Yeah,
Um,
she's still at it out there. That just blows my mind that she
is
can,
that
I don't know
ridiculous?
how she does it, man. She gets absolutely destroyed, by a certain group and then she has to leave. But she's like a whack-a-mole, man. You might expose her over here, but she's gonna pop up out of some other, hole somewhere and start some new crap.
And unfortunately, like there is that undercurrent of flow of people that will follow her from place to place to place to place too. Again, echoed in the mainstream world. It's just like those are like what we would call the kind of NPCs, only their you know operating program is that, instead of Democrat, instead of Republican, instead of whatever, right? So it's tribalism, it's human nature, really,
Yeah,
perverted and manipulated.
and one thing I've really noticed is that people who have had a lot of trauma, or not even a lot, but most everybody's had trauma in their life, but traumatized people need a savior. They need somebody that's going to tell them it's going to be okay and tell them all this other stuff and be mommy and daddy uh, because they haven't dealt with what's happened to them in an adult manner, which would free their minds to, and free their sovereignty to be who they are. So a lot of people are very okay with and very anxious to find somebody like a, Kim Possible to follow and to revere, and not tap into their own wisdom and their own sovereignty, their own divinity. And yeah.
It's
Hmm.
a game as old as time, quite literally on this planet. It's, every religion has that aspect to it, or has had. Every
Hmm.
mythology was a religion and had that aspect to it before that, right? So we've been looking up at people and looking down on ourselves for a very, very long time, and have just had that reinforced for so long that I can get why it's hard for people to see outside of that. But yeah, if we're ever gonna do it, it's kind of now, right? Because um, I feel like they're rubbing our face in the fact that this is all a game, just to see, you know, this is your chance, right? Like this is, we'll rub your face in it. We'll see if you'll blow up and you'll fight back. If you blow up and fight back, we might lose. But if you don't blow up and you don't fight back, we definitely win, right?
Yeah.
So,
And we're going to keep rubbing your face in it.
and then we'll keep rubbing your face in it. Exactly. So, yeah, I see it all the time too. Like um, I go to my way to try and consume a bunch of different mainstream news just to see what people are saying, where minds are at, right? And I am
Hmm.
seeing a
Hmm.
definite uptick in people realizing, the more they pull off stuff like the video we were talking with January 6th earlier, and that whole FBI kidnapping conspiracy before that, and just name it. It's really happening every week, right? And even like the SPF thing, or yeah, FXT, whatever that was,
FTX, yeah.
FTX. That's it. All of these different things are showing us there's no stability to any of this. It's all a lie. It's always been a lie. And if we don't do something about it, then yeah, they're going to put us into 15-minute cities. You're not going to own anything. You will have to be happy because we'll take your sadness away.
We have a camp for that.
We have camps for that. We have pills for that.
That's
Right?
right.
Do you remember Equilibrium? Did you ever see that movie Equilibrium? Right? Like they know how to do that, and they would be more than happy to do that.
Oh, yeah. Here's
And
a whole camp full of zombified happy people.
and they don't even need to use pills because they can use
Frequency.
frequency, right? And if you don't think that they would be doing that within a 15-minute city, you're dreaming. Right? It's like Pleasantville. They're basically creating a bunch of those little good places all over the place.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's crazy. Now, something that I wonder about is what makes people like you and me and a lot of people that are listening to us, what makes it possible for us to be able to see this stuff and others just not to care or not? What is it?
Well, it's
What do you
almost
think?
like I think that like it starts as a reaction. It's almost like we're the gut biome of the planet, if that makes sense. And like we're starting to alert the planet to, there's a massive problem. And she's sending the signal back out to the rest of the biome, being like, yeah, there is a problem. Everyone, activate. But then there's this like sugar, this refined sugar in the stomach lining that's going like, there's no problem, guy. In fact, let's do more of what we were just doing because that'll solve the problem, guy. Right? And there's a whole other people going, well, that sounds easier, but hey, let's do that, and that I feel like that's kind of what's happening. But eventually nature finds a way, right? And I think like one way or another, it's almost like there just needs to be some type of separation, right? Like that whole breakaway civilization concept for both sides to start to get it, right? Because imagine yourself as like a fence sitter right now. How do you know which way to go, right? You can't tell. It's not clear which side is right and which side is wrong because both sides come with their own level of insanity, as we've previously exampled, right? So it's like, yeah, this side is right about all of these very immediate things, but then there's all of that, right? And then this side, you know, they're so broken about all of these very immediate things, but then there's all of that, you know? And I can kind of get why people are just kind of riding that fence right now. And yeah, it's going to take something to like basically break the fence down for a lot of people, unfortunately. And yeah, maybe that's natural reaction, right? Maybe that's a cold. Maybe the planet is going to catch a cold, and one way or another, that separation is going to happen between uh, healthy cells and unhealthy cells. But I don't know.
Well, you
Fascinating.
would think that the pandemic would have been severe enough to really jar a lot of people, but it clearly wasn't. And that's just mind-boggling to me. I mean, that was like the psyop of this century easily. I mean, next 9/11 is the close second, but I mean, that was amazing how easy it was to lock down a whole world and still people, oh, well, it's over now, so no big deal. And see so many people still wearing masks and some of them too while driving in their car. And oh,
Well, I mean,
people.
before the government took over control of psychology, the psychologists believed that the government existed because of a shadow in people, right? Like that it was something wrong, not wrong, but something within the nature of humans that humans didn't want to deal with collectively, or at least not enough of them collectively. And that presents itself as this need to have a leader, right? To have that one person make like the daddy figure to make our mind for us. And I do think that in a way that that's true, that because all those people that we're kind of unintentionally condescending to right now or talking down about right
Well,
now.
kind of intentionally.
Mostly intentionally.
A little bit of both.
Okay, I fully fucking mean it. Yes, I'm being condescending, and yes, that means I'm talking down to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's because you don't want to take responsibility for yourself. And it's
Right, and it's okay to get mad at us for that. And maybe it'll jar something else in you. So, oh, go ahead.
yeah, and yeah, I'm seeing that debate finally hit the surface too of like, what does it mean to be mean to somebody, right? Like I come from Canada, so like this idea of being nice has like run Canada right off a cliff quite clearly, right? So I mean, it should be very easy for any Canadian to see why nice isn't always the right way to go, right? And you can
Yeah,
be
and it's interesting how the truth became being mean. You know, if you really tell the raw truth to somebody, you're being mean, and that's
evolution
a
is racist, right? So
yeah.
um yeah, so is biology. Biology is, anti-human somehow, right? I mean, right? That's what they're doing. That's the mental gymnastics going off in these people's brain. And yeah, I think it really does come down to any person who was be willing to humble themselves to their own shitty nature would never never go that route, right? They would be able to learn how to control their own shitty nature and choose better, right? And do better. But yeah, if you have someone constantly excusing your shitty nature away and actually making you feel good about being a shitty person and having
Encouraging it, yeah.
yeah, encouraging your shitty behavior in the world and all of that, then yeah, you don't have any type of reason to ever change it, right? So, and in order to get someone to see that, you're not going to do that by being nice.
No, and yeah, that's the sad reality. So interesting to see how this is going to progress. Um, I don't know. Just when I think I kind of know where things are going, you know, some other bizarre crap pops up and then we get diverted down another rabbit hole, like you said earlier. So who knows? I mean, it's right now, it's kind of like day by day and, you know, just uh, plan to the best of your ability, try and, you know, protect yourself as much as you can from what we pretty much know is coming. And then all we can do is basically, like we're doing now, is share information with people. You know, it's not to say that we're experts and we know everything about everything, because we clearly don't. But we do see quite a few things that if everybody were able to see those things and we collectively worked for our collective good, which means everybody thrives, everybody does well, uh, and we all have good hearted intentions for one another, we would be able to create something incredible. You know, what a concept. You know, is that possible? Oh, that's just pie in the sky. That'll never happen because people are just too evil and they're too self centered and self serving. Well, that's true for a lot of people, but not everybody. And hopefully not the majority.
And we have to stop, like, killing the tools and start taking the tools back. Like, if we can identify that the reason why that side wins is because they don't nitpick amongst themselves to make sure that they're 100% like-minded in every way, and they will commit to supporting each other, we need to do that too on our end,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. You know, one thing that popped up recently that I found really amusing is Trump was saying that he's going to do the same thing in 2024 that the Democrats have been doing with the ballot harvesting and, and the ballot box loading and all that. I'm like, now you're using your head. You know, I mean, if they put the tools out there for themselves to use to scam us, you know, why shouldn't we take advantage of those tools as well? Because we know that that whole system is completely rigged to work that way. So why shouldn't we take advantage of that and maybe have a possible chance of getting people in there that might be for the people? There maybe there's a few.
Right? I mean, look at
Yeah.
look at the mental gymnastics and excuse making parades that the left will make for Biden,
Oh,
right? And Kamala. And even Biden and Kamala, they you know it's a one. And on the other side, Trump's picking fights with DeSantis, right? It's like, guys, you're
which is
missing the
yeah,
point.
stupidity
But
right there.
before
Yeah.
we, the origin of the idea of what you just said comes from Kanye West. So I watched this all happen in real time. There was the dinner Kanye went to with Trump where he brought Milo and some other dude, and then all of them went on Tim Pool's podcast. either the same day or the next day. I'm kind of might have some of those details confused. Very, very close to talk about it. And Tim Pool, or sorry, Kanye West was asking Tim Pool basically what he has to do to win the election. Tim Pool was really busy and just kind of threw at him ballot harvesting. And then 4 or 5 podcasts later, Kanye kept ballot harvesting, ballot harvesting, ballot harvesting. And that's actually where it started. And I've never heard Tim Pool step up and say, I'm the one who put that into his head. He told that story as it happened, and I remember it. And then I
Wow.
remembered that. And then I remembered the conversation that happened, the second conversation between Kanye and Trump. And now Donald Trump is talking about ballot harvesting. So I'm like, that's actually a good sign, right? Like that's
Yeah.
kind of in a way what we're talking about, you know,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
like them finally recognizing, well, if they can, like, if they're gonna cheat, we probably should too, right? Instead of just sitting here crying about it, if we're gonna call that cheating, but it's just a tool and it's available to us too, we might as well use it, right?
Oh, I
Like
agree. Yeah.
it's
As
like
long
a
as it's still there and they're going to keep it there, we might as well, use it to the advantage of the people, we the people,
yeah,
and not to the self-serving. I don't even know what to call them anymore. I mean, there's so many names to describe them: parasites, grifters, self-serving psychopaths, and
yeah,
they're on both sides of the political aisle. They're not just on one. So we're not
absolutely.
talking totally Democrat, Republican, or conservative, or liberal. It's really we the people fighting for freedom against those who don't want us to be free. That to me that's the fight. You
Well,
know.
exactly. I mean, if we're really objective about it, we don't keep a short-term memory. The sides flipped over the last
Yeah.
25 years,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So
Remember, Democrats used to be anti-war. You remember that? And now they're the warmongers.
everything, everything literally flipped except for maybe gun control and gay marriage. Like that's the only things that maybe stayed on the right, but everything else, has kind of flip-flopped. So it's really quite ironic, and that's more proof in what we're saying that it's like it's a game, and they're trying to make it very obvious that it's a game and give us every opportunity to do something about it. And I think it's that, too many people unwilling to look at their own shadow, unwilling to deal with their own like their own life. I mean, even just on the logistics, like how many days do you think you could go without being able to go to the grocery store without for food, right? How many days do you think you could go without your cell phone service? All right. Like these are questions that you might have to ask yourself if you really want to be independent of them at some point in the future. Right. So yeah, there's so much going on, but I think that ultimately, using the hindsight of history as a little bit of a luxury here, that we've seen all of this happen before. And the reason why it was all happening before was to cover up the fact that the global powers were starting a massive war with each other, right? And I think that if you were to kind of filter out the signal from the noise, then that particular, what's going on in Russia and the Ukraine and how that's tied into all of this is kind of the focal point. That's like
Hmm.
really what's going on, where this is all going, and I guess if you want, maybe I don't want to. I hesitate to say like if the biggest threat in the mix, right? But that's the reality of why all of this other stuff is going on. It's if all of America was like copacetic right now and everything was cool and that was going on, there'd be a lot of people being like, "What the fuck are we doing? Like, leave it alone. Like, we're not the world police. Stop it." Right? But because all of this has been going on. That's why Iraq could happen. That's why Afghanistan could happen. That's why, what goes on in, I was going to say Syria, but that's not right. Yemen can happen. And what's going on with Saudi Arabia can happen is because everybody within the country is kind of mad about the wrong things. Right. And I think that that's exactly what's going on because they should be really mad about that. Right. Like, this ultimately, your country is being sold out so that the people who run your country can save face, and that's it.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
and
it's the temper tantrums of the world controllers, right?
yeah, yeah,
Uh, and it would be so easy for us to just totally take the what would you call it, the ropes of power away from them. If we only knew who they were and what they were doing. Of course, you and I do, and a lot of our listeners know exactly what they're doing. But so many people don't understand the banking system. They don't understand how money works. They don't understand how all of that energy, is just used. Money is energy, and money is used to buy people, to buy influence, to buy corporations, to buy all these things that are being used against us. But once people see what that game is, and we stop playing the game, it's over. It's so simple. But how do we get that out? How do we get people to see that?
Well, yeah, it's the only way that that could happen is for people to become self-sufficient, and that's a really difficult thing to do by
Well,
design.
I feel like I don't even know if that needs to happen, because if we, why don't we start our own industries by, from people who have this intent in mind, freedom for people and the goodwill towards men and women everywhere. Uh, why can't we start our own money system and begin to use it and not use their systems at all? We just bypass them totally. And, that's a large order, but it can be done. It totally can be done.
Apparently,
If
there's
we had a new money system, and maybe it started locally somewhere, some city says, you know what, we're gonna have little town dollars, and
hand
we're
carved
gonna,
coins.
yeah, we have little coins, and then we can even issue, papered uh, amounts that are going to represent that stuff, but it's not going to be centrally controlled, and it's going to be stable, and it's going to be based on gold or silver, or something, like along those lines. And we're going to use that because we're not going to be owned by anybody controlling that system. And those things can be done, but it takes the understanding of where we are and why we need to not go along with what we've got.
Yeah. Um, Everyone's plugged into it, right? Like if you're used to being able to, you're the way of life, right? Like our regular way of life. There's kind of, you see it with like immigrant families where they live like 9, 12 people to a 4-bedroom house, right? How many of us would be willing to do the same? Right? Like even just within this community, if we had like one house on one piece of land, would we all cram into it just to, eventually, no,
I don't think
no,
so.
no, right? But it might come like it to start something new might take something like that, right? Where it does take, you know, finding location, building on location, and then having limited until you expand, right? And having to share and having to crowdsource and having to do all these things collectively until we establish something new. Because you can't just kick everybody out of a city and be like, okay, this is our city now, and we're just
Yeah.
gonna, like that. That's not gonna happen, and that's where the problem lies, right? Is like, where do we go?
Have you
Because
heard of Lieberland?
right,
Have you
have
heard of
I?
Lieberland?
No, is that
It's
a real
in
place?
Europe. It's like a 10 square mile area, and I'm trying to think what it's adjacent to. I think it may be Croatia or somewhere in that region. There's a tiny little country called Lieberland, and they're doing exactly what we're talking about. And they've been doing it for like 10 years, and people have been trying to figure out how to expand that. And my understanding is that you had to sort of apply to go there, and they would actually give you some land and allow you to build a business. You had to sort of supply them with some kind of a business plan or something that you wanted to do that would benefit the country. And then they would allow you to come in and then execute your plan. And this was all done under, their sort of government that was completely for the people, by the people, completely transparent, no central control of money systems and all that. So, it's a great concept, and I haven't checked in on that for a while, but from what I remember a few years ago, they are actually doing what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So maybe that's going to be a model. I'll have to take another look at that and see where they're at with all of that.
And I do ultimately believe it will come to that at some point. That like even within each country there will be kind of a breakaway group from that country who the rest of the government, whatever, like let's just say it's happening in the United States. And it probably maybe picking Texas is the wrong example, but the rest of the United States, okay, Texas, you're your own country now. Do your own thing. We'll leave you alone. Leave us alone. We'll leave you alone. That's it. If you guys don't like it, you can go and move to Texas, right? And we'll just leave it like that. And I think that eventually something like that will have to happen. There's actually been a little bit of talk recently in Texas about that happening because I've got the details wrong, but it was that way at one point in time, right? Like it was kind of its own thing for a long period of time. And yeah, in a way, especially because of what's gone on in Texas over the last like 2 years, 3 years, with everybody from the LA area moving there, and like it's just kind of rebranded itself in a lot of different ways, and people are waking up to that and moving there because we can have guns there, we can have land there, we can grow our
and
own shit
and
there.
Florida too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Florida too. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
originally every state was its own republic.
yeah,
So, I mean, completely autonomous. And the whole idea of the central federal government was only to function to do a few things like uh, help with commerce between states, defend the nation. There are very few things that this federal thing was supposed to do at all. It was supposed to be every state was autonomous. That's what we need to get back to. And that of course money overrides all of those things, and you can buy the Supreme Court judges and the other judges to totally ignore the entire basis of the Constitution, because so much of what we're doing now is completely against the U.S. Constitution as it was originally intended, and we
oh,
see
yeah.
that. And the whole idea of the vote fraud stuff right now, and the Supreme Court going, no, none of you people have any standing. I mean, just because you're the voters, what makes you think you have something to say about that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, why do all those people have their jobs? Not because they're good at it, but because of identity politics at this point now,
You betcha. You
right? Like
betcha.
what just happened with your, what is he, like a minister of nuclear waste defense, I think? Like going to jail for stealing women's luggage and wearing it on television. You know what I mean? Like, that's
Oh,
when
yeah, there was
hiring for
another.
identity politics gets you.
Oh, yeah, there was another really good one too the other day. They were having a Senate hearing. Biden's people nominated this guy to be the head of the FAA, right? Federal Aviation Agency. And they were asking him basic aviation questions. And he couldn't answer one, not one. He had no clue. This guy was completely not qualified to even hold a desk job, just a, small entry level job in that organization, let alone run it. And they were trying to put him up there. It's ludicrous. It's hilarious when you think about it.
Yeah. So it's like, it's like, so ma'am, you were hired because you're black. Yes, that's correct. And because
And
you're,
gay.
yes, that's correct. Yes. Could you define woman for us? No, I'm not a biologist. Like, wait a
Woman. What's
second.
a woman? I don't
Exactly.
know.
That was a criteria for you being hired. You don't know how to define it. That's amazing, right? It's like we both play music. Could you like so your next drummer isn't allowed to know what the drums are. He
Right.
shouldn't be able to define what a drum set is, right? Or what a drummer is as a person who plays the drums. He shouldn't know what that means.
But we're going to bring him into the group, though.
But absolutely, he gets the job right before you go on tour. No religious. Right? Like that's what it's like, right? It's
Exactly.
literally like we're gonna put a band together. You know what? I'm gonna make a super group out of 80s sitcom stars. with no musical experience,
Whatsoever.
no training to
And
make
can't
up for the
sing.
lack of experience, no skills, no training to make up for the lack of skills. Just they look the part. Like that guy looks like he could be the basis for my band. You know, that's it. And that's exactly how the entire Biden administration did all their hiring. And Orange Man bad because he tried to fire a lot of those people, and but it's hilarious, hilarious.
It really is, and there's no easy answers, and Orange Man has his faults too, big time, and where are we going? Where are we going, people? I'm just envisioning, all the people listening to this, sitting out there going, "Oh my God,
I know, right?
this is crazy."
It is kind of a like that's why you kind of have to laugh at it. You got to make
You
fun of it,
do.
right?
You
And that,
do. I mean, that's what keeps us sane, I think. I mean, to me, there's two things that keep me sane: laughter and music. Or if it's not music, the arts, I would say, because I feel like that's what human beings do best. And, that's what keeps me going. Otherwise, I mean, if you really consider how freaking bad things are, it's a little on the grim side. So we have to laugh at it.
yeah, I definitely agree. Um, yeah, I think that, the focus should be kind of living around it or despite it, right? And imagining the kind of concepts and ideas that you've been talking about of like how we could do things better and what that would look like, as well as like making the world a little bit smaller in those ways too, right? It's like we might have to learn how to do things that we've never done before as individuals through this process. So like educating ourselves while we still have time, if and still have everything available to us to be able to, not have to rely on things quite as much just in case it does get to that point, right? And we do have to make those hard choices and separate ourselves from the world and maybe go out into the bush or get together with a group of people and go start a commune somewhere, depending on what's reasonable for us wherever we live, right? But I mean, like, even if it was just like all of the people watching this video, if shit happened tomorrow, we have no way to even contact each other, as an example, right? We might be all on the same page and it might be an ideal fucking new city, right? But there's also a lot to consider in terms of geography and all of these other things. So, yeah, I mean, I think that those thought processes are what other people don't want to go through, right? They don't want to think of those things. They just want McDonald's on Uber Eats, right? They just want the grocery store automatic checkout and these things, and they don't want to have to think about what would I do without any of these things and how would I survive without them, because it's easier and makes sense. But
Yeah, Grandma used to know how to do canning and jarring and preserving foods for the winter time, and used to be that our food was mostly grown locally. Wherever you are, there used to be farms that would supply the local area, and when they took that away and made it to where everything has to be shipped in from all over and all cross country and everything else, that's what took a huge amount of our autonomy away. And that's one of the things we need to focus on. There's a really cool place in Vegas here. It's an indoor growing facility where it's like hydroponics, and they grow all natural organic legacy seeds. And a bunch of the casinos are actually buying from them and using their food in their restaurants, which is pretty cool. But that's a concept that can be done in a lot of different places. You don't even need a huge amount of land, and water can be recycled and things like that. So there are some technological things that are available that we can use, which will help us, even though we may not be able to get out there, on a farm and know what to do. But there are going to be people that know how to build a giant warehouse and put that technology to work there. That's one idea I think that could work pretty quickly in a lot of places.
Yeah.
but it has to have, you know, the will of some people that can make it happen.
Yeah. Well, that's it, right? And enough people taking responsibility. And so, yeah, I guess the only thing we could really do is start with ourselves, try to inspire others to do the same, right? But obviously, if we're just making YouTube videos and just standing in line at grocery stores yelling at people, and we're not actually doing any of this stuff, it's not going to benefit us either, right? So,
True, true. So
that's why.
I'm always looking to network with people who do have, you know, some ability, and you know, I'm beginning to make some of those contacts. So I'm hopeful more and more that some of these things may come to fruition.
So you've been able to get out and play music again?
Yeah, yeah. It's actually I'm going to be playing again next weekend, the next 3 weekends actually. So yeah, real happy about that because that's I love my social interaction. Really, that's mostly it. Is, you know, getting out and playing music somewhere and getting to talk to people and hang out with people. Uh, I love that. You know, it's just that's fun.
That's yeah, it's you know, a true value in life, something that actually is worth something, right? So, unlike that money stuff we keep talking about, it's
Yeah.
actually worth something. It's an actual currency.
Yeah, just interaction with, you know, relationships with people, you know, whether it's just a casual thing out, you know, in a social event, or if it's friends and family and all that. I mean, that's really far more important. And we've, you know, we've been programmed to get away from that, and we have our faces stuffed in computers and phones, and instead of interacting with each other for the most part.
Yes, I agree. It's important to, you know, not only that, but also our environment, right? Get back in touch with each other, ourselves, and the environment. It's like getting back to basics is kind of it, right? If this is the end of the world as we know it, then yeah, we would that the basics is where we start.
And I would say if there is anybody out there who has wherewithal and who has the intent to maybe try and do some of the things we're talking about, get a hold of Shane and tell him about your ideas. You know, let's start networking more and working together and seeing, you know, what skills we can bring together in whatever region we're in, and try to start networking a little more and put some of these ideas to work. Just a
Exactly.
thought.
And keep in mind what we also said earlier, right? Is that, like, you know, we're not going to be 100% like-minded on every topic, right? Because I hear the story over and over again where these groups come together, these intentional communities, and then they realize that they are all, in fact, humans, right? And they do all fart, they do all pee, and they, you know, they're not ascended beings, in fact, right? And once you're off of the internet and actually in each other's presence, and you have to interact with each other on a human level like that, it doesn't quite work the same. So that's also something to keep in mind when we're bringing together these communities and networking, is that, you know, we are dealing with humans, and it's not always perfect, it's not always pretty, but we're looking for, you know, the best possible outcome. And I like the phrase that, you know, there's not often solutions, it's usually trade-offs, right? And when it comes to this world that we want, we have to make a lot of compromises, we're going to have to make a lot of trade-offs that we, you know, that idea of utopia, you know, brainwashed us into thinking we wouldn't have to, but we do, right?
Yes, indeed. Yep, I agree.
The other side will be all blissed out, all getting along with their fucking like frequency mixer on their heads, right? We're
They'll
the
be in the metaverse.
we're still gonna fight with each other, you know, we're still gonna argue, we're still gonna bicker, we're still gonna get annoyed with each other. They're the ones who are gonna be okay.
Yeah, they're going to be with their VR goggles on, and they're going to be interacting in their utopian demo world. You know.
Somebody get me more chicken, chicken goop. Put the straw in your mouth, pull the lever, drink your chicken, which is actually made out of crickets, but it's
Oh God.
Are you
Yeah.
doing the
Check the ingredients in those packages, people. They got some fancy names for crickets and grasshoppers and beetles and and roaches.
Hmm. They always have actually, but yeah, now we're kind of getting savvy to some of that. Are you still doing your YouTube channel?
Yep. I've been doing it a lot less though because I've been battling strikes. And they've been dredging up stuff from 2, 3 years ago and going, you know what? We really didn't like this. So we deleted this video and we gave you another strike. So I go from 2 strikes to 1 strike. So then I lay off for a while. And then lo and behold, before long, oh, we found another one that we really didn't like.
Yeah.
It's disinformation and definitely disagrees with the CDC and the WEF and the WHO and a whole lot of other alphabet type groups. So we will give you another strike.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I have to lay low again, so hoping that I'm not going to get wiped out. So
Yeah, I
I've only
think
got 1 strike right now that clears early April, I think. So I
yeah,
don't
it's
know.
kind of funny because all of those strikes are actually like a medal for being correct at this point, right? It's like if you think about it, it's like every time you got a YouTube strike over the last 2 years, it's like you were right.
Yeah. And so I have this delusional idea that one day, somehow YouTube and Facebook and all the other DARPA created entities are going to be taken over by we the people and actually become very useful. So that's why I don't want it to just go away, but uh,
And maybe we have to all jump over onto Rumble until Rumble becomes the new YouTube. I don't know.
yeah, well, I'm on there too, and but it's a much smaller audience. It is growing fast, which is good, and there's a lot of great information on Rumble. I'm on there, and I'm on Odyssey as well, but it's not even a tenth of the audience, at this point. And but yeah, it's definitely worth being on there. It's to me, Rumble is the best platform right now that I know of, anyway, to find good information. Uh, so I don't know. I don't know.
Life. Well, why don't you tell people where to find that, and then I can let you get on with your evening.
Okay. Well, there's insidethematrix.org where I post my shows as well as other shows of interest or videos of interest that I find. And then on YouTube, it's just Inside the Matrix. So if you look for that channel, and you'll see a little picture of me holding a big red pill with sunglasses on, and that's how you know it's me. And yeah, there used to be a couple hundred shows on there, interviews and things, and now I think I'm down to about 120 that haven't been removed yet. So
Many. Wow.
yeah, it's some didn't even make it. They didn't used to give me strikes for a long time. They would just take them down, and then they started with the strikes thing. But some of them only made it a day or two, and they just were disappeared.
Well, like I said, nowadays that's a badge of honor. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. I think it is, sadly, but I appreciate the fact that we have people out there who are brave enough and to listen to us ramble on for the amount of time that we're on here, and we appreciate all of you. And hopefully someday, we'll be in a better place and we'll meet a lot of people out there.
A better place, not the good place.
Not that good place.
All right, brother. Lots of love and respect. And
Same here, Shane. I love you, brother. I love what you do. Keep doing it. Don't ever stop.
I will not. I refuse.
Keep that music going. Yeah.
New album probably. We were gonna get it out this fall, but it'll probably be next spring. So Unravel
Okay.
3.
Looking forward to it, man. And also, yeah, I have 6 music videos on my Inside the Matrix channel, and also on my Jimi Brent YouTube channel. A lot of my music is on there as well.
Very nice. All right. Bye, everybody at home.
Bye, everybody. Take care.